The Rebecca Zahau case is both deeply disturbing and mysterious, and paired with the fact that there was important evidence found near to the scene which wasn't processed immediately, makes you wonder why the police did that. Were they trying to delay methods to ensure that whoever that may have been responsible, if foul play, would be able to get away with it? Well, join me today as we take a deep look into the case and the potential links to other missing DNA. Welcome to the Rebecca Zahau case. As I said, today we're focusing in on another piece of evidence which was found in an unusual area, and it's near to where Max Shacknai, the young individual, had his accident when going over the banister and hitting the floor. I believe it's near to that staircase, lower down where the basement is located. A glove was found. And when it comes to the DNA, that's a bit of a mystery. So today we're going to take a look at some of the evidence, the backstory behind it, the descriptions and the details, and then apply it visually to the crime scene photos and establish a possible link with a different theory of whose ever glove that belonged to, that could have been used in the possible death of Rebecca, and why certain items were found in places, yet it had no link to Rebecca. You know, when it comes to touch-based DNA, it's a very important thing, but if you've covered yourself, your hands, even your feet, if you've covered your shoes to hide prints, you're going to go a bit more undetected, or at least the chances of leaving traces will be lower. Now, if that was to take place, it would imply that a person or people were taking consideration and care into being methodical in a way to make sure they didn't leave anything behind that could trace back to them. But if a glove is left behind, what does that exactly mean then? Did someone get sloppy on the job? Maybe they got lucky because police didn't see to it immediately. I mean, look at the last video that I did of the guest house, which is in the courtyard area, away from the main house, but still on site, on property. And that's where Adam was. And then in one of the rooms, unmade bed, makeup wipes, underwear in a bin, and women's clothing just spread out on the floor. Why would it be like that? Why would it be left? And for example, the underwear, the DNA wasn't found to belong to Adam or Rebecca Zahau. But then again, it was left for some time until it was checked, I think a few years later or so. And some cross-contamination in between could override it. So if it's not going to be taken in care with that, and what makes you think it's going to be taken with care when it comes to other items within the house? Maybe the focus was the bedroom and the balcony, but that was it. What about the rest of the house? I mean, you look at the Noah Presgrove case, true crime related, body found on the highway, last seen at the party house a mile away south. Why wasn't a deep search done on the house itself to check for additional clues, footprints, touch-based DNA, fingerprints, and all of that? Do the police do a half-hearted effort because they're just not proactive enough? They don't feel it's important or there's a need? Or could there be an underlying level of knowing what could be up, where it could link back to, and deciding not to follow up on it because they're either working alongside, or there's some kind of agreement going on in the background which other people could consider as corruption? You never know. It's worth considering it all. But beside that, that is what we're considering today. And I'd like to say welcome if you are watching this video, and shout out to those currently here during this live premiere. Share your thoughts and reactions in any way. Live reactions in the chat box on the right side of the screen. And if you are interested in additional videos like this, if you have missed out on any of my recent Rebecca Zahau case videos, don't worry, the full playlist is available. Top right corner where the ice symbol is up there, if you click on it, you get the drop down menu box, Rebecca's case, and then some loose videos attached if you'd like to catch up on that as well. So, the order of how we'll do things today is get into the details of the key focused piece of evidence and then compare and contrast to the rest of the property and other items found along the way. Here is a photo of Rebecca Zahau, and the first detail here: a black latex glove was found in a crawl space in the stairway leading to the basement of the Spreckles mansion, where Rebecca Zahau was found dead in July 2011. Location: glove located in a crawl space. As for the stairway, well, I guess it's the stairway of the basement itself, not the stairway of where you go upstairs to the bedrooms. Other gloves, a pair of garden gloves, were also found, and they were located on a living room coffee table. Now, these gardening gloves may have no real link or appliance. They could well be Rebecca's own gardening gloves, likely. I mean, if she's into nature, if she's into plants and gardening, that could be the case. Here's an example of the gardening gloves that were found inside of the house on a coffee table. And that was the living room. So at some point, maybe she was sat down, and this is before her death, whether it be the morning, the 13th, or the day before, the 12th or the 11th, days before that, sat down, maybe having a drink, coffee. I mean, I think you can see a coffee mug just back there behind those seashells. There's a TV remote as well. That table, though, seems awfully close to the sofa or the couch. Where do you get your legs in, exactly? Any fingerprints up on the table? Any markings? I mean, I'd expect if there was any DNA on those gardening gloves, they could well be not relevant to her death, but more likely to a previous time. However, you could put the argument across and say, just as an argument, because of the black painting that was on Rebecca's bedroom door, were these gloves used at any point because the colour of the gloves matched the colour of the paint, so it kind of blends in a way, and it adds as protection from touch-based DNA. But then again, if you have another glove, a black one, that could have been used instead. I think that these may have been used by Rebecca because it's inside of the house and it's not like in the caretaker's building or where gardeners could come and go themselves. This looks like it's a personal item which she may have put on at some point when strolling around the garden, looking at the plants, maybe planting something, who knows. If it's one of her hobbies, what she likes to do. So I don't think it's too significant, that, in my opinion. You know, as for the coffee mug, the cups, and anything that could have been used at some point on the day, you're taking a sip, I mean, a drink of tea, coffee, with the lips being around the rim of the mug, would you be able to find any lipstick, or look back to when they may have made a drink, and did they plan on making a drink? How far did they get? I'm just trying to think. I'm not too sure if the autopsy report mentioned anything about what was in her system at the time, if she had anything to eat in the morning on the day, had anything to drink, to try and work out the true time of death. I mean, what else do we have on here? Remote controller in the corner of the screen. Any fingerprints, dirty marks? Looks a bit dirty in a way. Hard to tell if it's fingerprints or touch-based DNA. Could do with a clean, unless that's white dusting to detect for any fingerprints where you sprinkle a bit of powder on, then it'll show up clearer. But that's evidence number 2. You let me know if you noticed anything on the gloves, like any markings, any patches, any blood of any type, if it's red. I mean, the colour tone of it looks a little bit reddish in some of the creases, but that might just be the tone of the photo when it was taken, or wear and tear of the gloves themselves. There's a bit of reddish, and considering that when you look at the bedroom of Rebecca's, some of the items which had a period blood on it, that colour was slightly faded but red too. There might be a point to put across, who knows. Zoom out just for a second. Now, This is just an example photo. It's not related to Spreckles' mansion. I just wanted to give you an example of what stairway leading to a basement and the crawl space as well. And when you think of basements, you can associate it with creepiness, scary stories, things hiding in the dark, access points, people hiding, lurking in the basement if someone's moved into a new house unaware of what's underground, underneath the floors, hearing strange sounds. As for Spreckles' mansion, was anyone down there at any point? Like a stakeout waiting to strike for Rebecca? Or it could have just been used as a potential spot to dispose of any evidence. But would you expect more than a glove? That's what you could argue. Crawl space, another example photo. If you used to go down the basement, for example, if this was it, and then the crawl space would be underneath there, because you've got to crawl under, kind of, underneath the stairway, the staircase, in the corners, underneath. But of all places, a glove in a basement, but no, it's actually in the corner, tucked away, hidden. Why over there? Why, out of sight? You'd have to go searching for it or looking underneath. Did someone chuck it there, toss it in the corner to try and hide it, to plant it as evidence? What exactly? And why only one glove? What happened to the other? It kind of reminds me of the Idaho 4 case, Brian Koberger, in a way. So since you've got an idea of how the basement could be, this is what we're really dealing with. And I think that this is the door that leads to the basement or leads to some other rooms, which eventually gets to it. I'm assuming that because it looks like the gradient goes down a bit. And it looks like it's going under. It's underneath the stairway of the main staircase that leads up to Rebecca's bedroom and the landing and where Max had his accident. So that's what I think. You correct me if I'm wrong, but it's interesting, and tell him. I've enhanced the photo as best as I can. First time I've seen it from this angle. This particular photo is attached with the diagram, which I've just cropped out, of Max falling over the banister, grabbing the chandelier, and then hitting the ground just on the right near to where that plant pot is at. The other photos of Spreckle Mansion show the door as closed. So if it is to a basement, it's quite fancy, having the door there is, and the way the walls are plastered and the colouring of it as it goes down. It looks like a bit of a corridor. Maybe somewhere down there is the basement or a crawl space. You'd expect a proper stairway going downwards, similar to what we saw here, and this one is you're going down. This example photo looks like it could be of near the just main house as you're walking about, and then you reach the door leads to basement. I'm thinking that door here leads to basement, or there's a bit of a walk until you get to the actual set of the stairwell, which goes down further underground. Could be the case. That being in mind, this is an actual photo of the spot. I don't actually see the stairwell from here, but when you try look online for crime scene photos, this is really the only one that they show. So it appears to be, I guess it is the basement, but it's more of a crawl space. I don't see the stairwell above it. Maybe that's just a camera angle. As for this white frame of wood, I don't know if that's like a panel that's been removed or if it's a door well, maybe. But looking through there, besides the obvious piece of evidence, it looks like sand in a way. Interesting. It's not like a proper basement concrete, is it? Under the house, it's just all dirt. That's the foundations of the house, and look in there. I mean, why? Maybe it's supposed to be, but it looks like a concrete wall which has gone across and then broken through with a hole, and it goes on and on and on. Was someone using this as a place to sleep, homeless, rough? Who knows? It just makes you think. I mean, maybe there's a hole, a breakthrough to be able to get and pass cables through so it connects to the house and upstairs. That could be the case. But it just looks like it's been broken through. Like there was already a walled out 1 point concrete and then someone smashed through to create a hole. It's not like a perfect cutout. is it? It's broken. And you got all these old, dodgy looking cables all tangled up, whatever they are. I can see maybe an odd plug as well. Where these come from? To do with the electrics, the lighting, maybe. Connected upstairs. Are they broken, damaged? Kind of hard to tell, but they do look quite old and covered in dust and dirt too. But a crawl space like this, why would a glove be there exactly? There's, for and against ways you can look at it. But do we see anything else on the ground? Any other dirt? I'm not too sure what that is. If there was any footprints or handprints, that could well be caused by the person crawling through to try and put the evidence marker there. With it being sand, your hand's going to sink in and be imprinted. The concrete has crumbled away there. Interestingly, if you look on the left as that white wooden frame, there's a bit of a lip in a way where something slots in. Maybe that's a lock to a door, possibly. It's like something fits in there. If it's like a panel that covers this whole small little crawl space entranceway, could be the case. But yeah, the concrete has broken. I have enhanced the photo, by the way, just to make it a bit brighter and clear for you to see. But evidence 21, latex black glove. So what's that all about exactly? Where's the other black latex glove and what was it used for? Was it on the day of Rebecca's death? Was it there before? Don't know. Would it have been neglected? This is the thing. You could argue and say if there was any maintenance being done on the house or cables needed to be rewired or checked at some point in the past, the maintenance guy or another person could have been called round to the house to check in, and they had to go down to the basement. They had to go to the crawl space here, had to crawl through on their hands and knees wearing possibly black latex gloves for protection whilst they were handling the cables and checking for any loose wires, any disconnect, refitting, rewiring at any point in the past. And maybe the maintenance worker took one of their gloves off whilst keeping the other one on, maybe, put it to one side, got distracted, once the job was done, left the glove behind. That could be simple and innocent, of course, but we don't know if that actually did happen. That's only a theory. Just like the theory of whatever happened to Rebecca, this black glove could link to it, as in a usage of protection to protect touch-based DNA from getting about and being spread, avoiding it being traced back to someone else. So it just seems like it was all Rebecca's doing. If anyone else was responsible and they were wearing gloves, then they can prevent the DNA prints from spreading and being found by police. But this particular glove left behind, whoever forgot about it. But why would it be put here? Exactly. If what happened to Rebecca took place upstairs, bedroom and then balcony, was Rebecca in the bedroom at the time of a potential attack, ambush? Was Rebecca on lower ground floor in the living room, kitchen as someone broke in, or may have come out of the basement possibly? Depends. I mean, sometimes you've heard stories of basements where there could be a sleeping bag. There's a homeless rough person living. You've never known about it until it's too late, until you hear sound and you go down and then you see it. Sometimes no one's there, maybe abandoned. Other times they come and go. On some occasions you might come face to face. It can be a scary experience, and it can happen quite a bit in the US. If for some reason there was a person present, depends on the security at the house, any cameras, any security guards, any regulars coming and going. It might be a vacation home, meaning they're not there all the time 24/7. So the times when they're not there, has anyone else made themselves comfy? Makes you wonder. And if it did coincide with around the time of when Rebecca was at the house on the 12th, coming back from dinner with Adam, whilst Jonah, the boyfriend, went back to the hospital for Max, whilst Rebecca was winding down for the night and Adam retreated to the guest house, was anyone lurking underground in darkness, waiting to strike. That would be a rather unsettling experience. And such as here, besides the gloves, if Rebecca at some point was simply sat down in the living room, did she ever hear any knocks, tapping sounds, any strange noises coming from under the floor? Ultimately, if anyone was truly down there in the basement, and they were really underground, you'd expect drag marks, footprints, handprints, and much more, and you don't really see that here. Like, even if you were wearing gloves and you even had like bags on your shoes to prevent the prints, as you're wading through on your hands and knees, crawling or dragging, you'll create ruts in the ground, right? Ruts in the dirt or the sand. As it will sink, it would become telling. You don't really see that here. So maybe a person kind of reached in at some point, tossed a glove there or took it off, but didn't actually have to engage the body all the way through this crawl space to get inside. They didn't have to. Could it have been used as a potential spot in disposing of evidence when they were trying to figure out, how do I get rid of evidence? Do I go here? No. And decide to leave it and check elsewhere. This may not be an entrance-exit point for someone lurking. It may have been a point, a location of opportunity at some point on the day of Rebecca's death, if another person involved felt, right, where can I dispose of a key item? And they thought, what about her? It would make you think, if anyone was involved, did they know the property well? Did they know the blueprints? Were they searching about? Did they know where to go exactly? What about any prints on the doors, the doorknobs? Well, if there's a glove found in a crawl space likely to get there, if you're wearing gloves already, you're not going to leave any DNA. And how often is the basement accessed by Rebecca, by Jonah, by anyone else? How often? Is it a place people don't go to often? As for the crawl space, probably even less. But if evidence is found down there, evidence is found, and that's quite striking. In regard to the context and testing, DNA results, the San Diego County Sheriff's Department stated that the latex glove and the gardening gloves yielded insufficient DNA for conclusive testing or failed to show any useful profiles. Homicide theory. During the civil trial, the Zahau family's legal team suggested the gloves may have been used and discarded by an intruder. Forensic expert Paul Holes noted a patterned print in the dried black paint on Zahau's fingernail. A patterned print on Rebecca's fingernail. But yet the paintbrush didn't have her DNA on it, only the paint tube. So how was she able to paint on the door? She got paint on her first, and then decided to cover up so she wouldn't leave any prints behind. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Strange. It's interesting how they referred to, as in the legal team, the gloves may have been used. Well, there's only one glove here, and as for the gardening gloves, as you see here, because they're left out on the table, granted, and now other items are left out in the bedroom in odd places, like a set of knives, paintbrushes on the floor in a bedroom of all places. But gardening gloves, where they're located, I wouldn't say that's suspicious. You got the living room, it's near to the courtyard, the garden, the flowers. You just put them on, go in, go out, pop in and out. It's not that odd here. But if anyone was to use them for foul play, leaving them here may seem normal and not abnormal. They blend in. Key evidence, but in open sight, it just blends in, because normally if something important was used, it will be either disposed of or hidden. For example, you look at the basement, that looks more suspicious than the gardening gloves on the coffee table. However, what's in open sight could be more relevant to Rebecca's death than something like this. This visually looks dodgy. Looks can be deceiving them. It's worth taking in mind. But I think the theme of hand protection is important in this case when it comes to the lack or loss of DNA. during the build-up and onwards with Rebecca. We've got to take in mind this insufficient DNA for conclusive testing is similar in a way to the women's panties in the guest house, because it wasn't seen to immediately. It was delayed. With it being delayed, DNA may have been lost along the way. You would have at least expected that the gloves, the inside of the glove, like the latex one, even the gardening one, would have had rich DNA inside, unless there is an option that you can wear double gloves. You can wear 2 layers of gloves, especially latex, and maybe in hospitals that's what they do. If one pair of latex gloves are too thin or could tear, you put on a second pair over it. So the second pair that go over the other latex gloves, there's no print, there's no markings on it. But the original gloves that you did put on will be, or could be, rich with DNA and data inside. The hands sweat when wearing latex gloves, and all the touch-based DNA inside where the fingertips are, the nails and the palm and all of that. But the original gloves were disposed of or taken away, and the secondary gloves, for example, this one here, left behind, you wouldn't expect to find any DNA on it, because if you keep your original gloves on whilst you're taking the secondary layer of gloves off, you're still wearing protection as you're taking things off, so you're not leaving any prints behind. You've got to take that into consideration. You could be wearing latex gloves underneath, for example, the gardening gloves, these ones here. Depending on the fitting and the size, you could possibly wear skin-tight latex gloves, then put the gardening gloves on top. But that would be at the max. You wouldn't be wearing 2 layers of gardening gloves because it's the size, the fitting, it just wouldn't be practical or really possible exactly. 2 layers of latex gloves make sense, because if they tear or rip, then you risk being in contact with a substance or chemicals or whatever, or you risk contact with your fingerprints going through your finger, your nail tearing through the latex and then making contact with something and then leaving your print behind. If you double bind yourself with another layer of protection, you're more likely to stay safe and prevent your own trace from being picked up on. There is that. And if a person was wearing 2 layers of latex gloves, they were taking it into consideration in mind, which could imply that it was more methodical. Considering how Rebecca was found as well, with arms and legs behind and bound with material and even gagged, that implies that could have been strategical as well. Because would Rebecca go to that length herself? Probably not. And even if she did, would she have the knowledge on how to do a sailor knot? When you've actually got someone who's staying in the guest house known as Adam Shacknai, who is like a sailor on a tugboat, who knows very well how to make those ties with rope. It does make you wonder, doesn't it? And it will link to Adam as a theory in this video, so make sure to stick around for that. Right, so we've got that in mind. Adam, whilst he was in the guest house and away from it all, he was the first person to witness Rebecca over the balcony with the rope around her. And Adam had said, and it's mentioned in the autopsy report, that he grabbed a table, placed it down outside to be able to stand on it to reach her. But before he even did that, he went to grab a knife, probably from the kitchen. I guess the knives that were found in Rebecca's bedroom were left as they were, supposedly. I guess it was a knife block. I wonder if Adam had said, because it wasn't made clear, when he went to collect the knife or a knife, he noticed there was some missing. Don't remember him mentioning anything of that. Strange. So he grabbed whatever he had, the knife. He went outside into the courtyard, stood on the table and cut the rope to cut her down, catch her, and then lay her out on the floor, and then provided at least CPR. As for mouth resuscitation, there was mention that there was no DNA there, giving like the kiss of life or whatever you call it. But at least with the CPR upon the chest sternum area with a rhythm to it, likely Adam would have been barehanded. No gloves, no protection, just simply getting out of the guest house after waking up early in the morning, maybe in pyjamas, maybe, or putting on his normal clothes, and then being caught off guard supposedly by Rebecca, having no time to put gloves on. And would there be a reason or a need to put gloves on if you're innocent? Exactly. And we're taking all that in mind, what he did, you could say, well, it was the right thing, what he did. It's the fact that there was no DNA, or really not much at all, which showed that Adam did grab this specific knife and that Adam did apply pressure onto Rebecca to perform CPR. There's no prints and no DNA, then you can say there's no evidence that that's what actually happened. No proof, hard proof to say that's what Adam did. It's just words and hearsay. That's where it gets a bit worrying and concerning. Is it possible that he did what he said, but the reason why his prints didn't stay behind, unless it's a rare case, because more likely he was wearing gloves, like what we talked about? Look at the mention here, DNA results. The latex gloves and gardening ones yielded insufficient DNA for whatever reason. If the latex gloves were double bind with a second layer and the second layer were found, or a second layer of the pair was found, no DNA, that would make sense. The original pair of latex gloves, black, may have been taken away, disposed of by a potential killer. And whilst they were wearing all those gloves, if it was Adam, was he wearing them when he did perform that CPR and when he did cut that rope? Why would he do all that if he supposedly was the one that caused it in the first place? Well, to make it seem like you're the first witness, you're the first clueless person, and it shows that you care, and it's normal instinctive human behaviour that if you see someone in distress, see someone struggling, or a person in a compromised position, whatever it may be, that you act on it, you help them or try to. And if there's evidence and proof that you tried to help, it's less likely that you're tied to the one responsible for her death. But you could have done both, possibly. When you look at the crime scene area circled and the guest house, from the distance and location, it's not that far apart. Now, as for hearing sounds and seeing through the window, if Adam was looking through the window at the same time, he may have seen her or heard something. No mention of that. Yeah, there may have been a neighbour or a passerby early hours of the morning or later on at night, the night before, who heard screaming, but that was supposedly from kids and people messing about outside near the beach area. But as I always say, well, you might have the caretaker's house down there with the bins and maintenance. If there was a caretaker living there on site at the time, or if they come and go, especially when the vacation home isn't being used and it's being looked after and maintained by whoever. Would it belong to a caretaker, the black latex glove, and they accidentally left it behind and it's not that deep or that big of a deal? Even if these specific gloves weren't linked to Rebecca's death, it still seems likely that someone or something was using protection so they could avoid the touch-based DNA. It's my thought, it's my opinion, right? Neighbour's house nearby with the balcony. There may be the trees in between that divide the two properties could have caused a blind spot, meaning if anyone was on the balcony, they wouldn't be able to look across to where Rebecca's bedroom's located and the balcony roughly there or so. It is interesting. It is. Guest house just there. From different angles. 2 rooms, for example, and one with the women's clothing. Does the women's clothing left and abandoned link to a glove left and abandoned? Because look at this. Rebecca described as organised. The house, to some extent, organised and tidy, and yet her bedroom not so much. And normally you can associate your bedroom as a sanctuary of peace, a place you can retreat to and relax and shut the world out. If Rebecca's bedroom was in that state, and clearly she was not at peace no more, that something had happened, something went wrong. If a routine or a pattern changes all of a sudden drastically, it's not the norm, it's abnormal. These abnormalities. If Spreckles' mansion is cared for and looked after so well, then why was the, items of interest left as they were? And not just left, but outright abandoned. A pair of panties left in the guest house. And not just anywhere, but in the bin. Purposely discarded. But then as for other women's clothing, probably to the same person, just left on the floor. Left on the floor, not even folded. What a mess. What type of guest, what type of visitor comes over, stays in the guest house and leaves items of their own sprawled out on the floor? Like, like they don't respect the place. Because from the looks of it, Rebecca was proud and respected herself, and for most of the time, I guess, at this mansion, whether she, with being a mansion and being maybe more rich, or at least the boyfriend, if you've got your own cleaner or maintenance, you might not have to do the work yourself. It depends, unless Rebecca was a hard worker and liked doing the odd chore around the house at times to keep busy and pass a bit of time in between. Who knows? You got a bit of a garden back there, haven't you? Got the bushes, the trees. At some point, she could come out into the courtyard, put her gardening gloves on, and potter about. Maybe that's what Rebecca did on the day or days before. Whether that to be distract herself, pass a bit of time, hobby, activity, could be anything. But the gloves, they didn't look too dirty. Maybe they've not been used in recent time. You couldn't really see any dirt or soil on them. But if you're just simply pruning or cutting a bush or tree, plants, you might not make much contact with the dirty ground. And if it's quite dry, with it being California Coronado, the temperature and everything, the soil, the ground could be quite dry and crumbly. So it's not going to leave too much marking on the gloves. It could be a bit dryish. But with dryishness and dustiness and dirt and ingrained dirt on the groundway, the tiled groundway or brick pathway, and as you see the balcony, that could explain why her feet were dirty. Explains why there was the odd dirty footprint as well. But that would imply that if she was walking about, she wasn't wearing any slippers, shoes or socks. And why is that the case? Sometimes, if a person isn't quite well, or they're not quite there, if they just suddenly walk off somewhere, or are walking about up and down because they're panicking or they feel tense, they feel uncomfortable, they might neglect certain things about themselves, neglect health, neglect clothing, neglect protection, as in wearing socks, shoes to protect your feet when walking outside, to avoid any prickly stuff, to avoid stepping on anything that could hurt you. If you're too preoccupied with other thoughts or internal thoughts in the moment, it's kind of like in a trance. Did that happen to Rebecca at any point? Exactly. But when it comes to gloves and possibly tied with DNA and other evidence not having prints on, that seems like a person who knows what they're doing. Under the circumstances with Rebecca on that day, did she know what she was doing? Was she anticipating what was to come? See, as we look here, a different perspective, that door, what we saw earlier, which was open, this particular one, it's not, because I think this is just a property photo, not a crime scene one on the day of the death. But you can see that the door's there. As for that box on the side, I don't know if that's like a heater. Would you have had Wi-Fi meter heater boxes back then to control the temperatures, or if it's like some kind of an alarm of some sort? Who knows? But the door there closed, which I'm guessing goes to the basement possibly. And looking at the house area, and then you see through the window up there of the roof. Where are we exactly looking? I'm guessing that where that palm tree is, behind that, as hold on, you see that window there. I'm thinking that's probably to do with that window. I could be wrong. You know, because the size of it, you got that set of curtains, they're quite short unless they drape down. That window, quite a wide, long window, different 3 panels from the looks of it. I'm thinking that's probably what you see there, the panels, the windows. So really, when you look through that and you see the corner edging of the roof, tiled roof, which is this one here, just underneath it, below the circle, is where Rebecca was to be found. And the table down there on the ground. So that's quite haunting and creepy. Right. So you go up the staircase, and I don't know if we've got them all. Maybe not. No. But you'd go up the staircase, up that way, go turn on your right, go down that like landing corridor, and then take another right, and then you get to her bedroom door, and then you go inside. And that's where her bed is and was. Wow. So when looking through there, even though it's hard to see, that wall that you're seeing out there is the outside area where a bedroom would be and the balcony. So for Rebecca, where was she at the time? Did she wake up, go downstairs, and then something happened? She wake up, go downstairs, then go back upstairs, and then something happened? Did she even get the chance to wake up and go downstairs or do anything? Did she get a chance to leave the bedroom at all? Well, considering that 2 knives were in her bedroom, they would have come from the kitchen likely, and it had her blood on. She must have grabbed them or used them at some point, but why exactly? What were the knives actually used for? Was it to cut any rope? Cut the length of it? Would you really need to? Because if you had rope and you were going to use it for something and it was too long, instead of cutting it, why not just wrap it round and round something to shorten the length and then knot it so it's extra tight and secure? That's one way of doing it. Binding that rope, strengthening it, making it thicker. Cutting rope with a knife, you've got to use, I guess, the correct knife and the correct technique, because if you don't, the rope could splinter, and weaken itself internally, causing it to snap easier. That's what you've got to take in mind. But beside that, this area, familiarity with Max, who went over the banister, hit or grabbed the chandelier, which ended up breaking and landing on the floor just there. And if that's the basement on the left, interesting. At any point was that used? Was the basement door accessed, used on the day of Max's accident or the day of Rebecca's death days later? Did the person come and go from there? And as for the door to her bedroom, she saved him. Can you save her? In third person by Rebecca. Seems less likely when her prints aren't even linked to it directly. In order, to write that out on a door, you likely need a paintbrush. So you'd use this one because it appears that it was used. Look, got the paint on it. Now, I think it was Med. Shout out to Med, a viewer on my channel, that did say the reason why a paintbrush like this, why it didn't splatter paint on the ground, is because it was quite gloopy and thick, the paint itself, and not watered down. A bit more sticky, a bit more solid. It's not as loose, it's not going to splash the same way. The liquid, if it's quite thick on the brush, it stays on the brush. You start painting it on a canvas or on some wooden door, you leave a thick mark behind in a way. You're not going to risk it dribbling down the wall if you had very thin paint or very watered down paint. So if a paintbrush was placed down or dropped, as the paintbrush hits the carpet, the ground area, it's not really going to bounce the same, and the paint that is on the brush, the remnants of it, isn't going to splash because it's quite solid and firmly applied to the bristles of the brush. Nevertheless, this likely was used. Brush head thicker, bigger compared to the secondary paintbrush, which I think we have here. The secondary one much thinner. The bristles much thinner, would take significantly longer to be painting on that door. As we suggested, that the beginning of the sentence S could have been used with a thinner brush because it looks more faded and a failed attempt, but then the rest of the text is quite thick and clumpy, blocked letters. A thicker brush used. This being the next main option. With paint being clearly on the brush, this was definitely used on the door. It seems very likely. But the problem is there is no DNA on this brush, especially no DNA that links to Rebecca. So if Rebecca was responsible for all this, then why was there no print? Are we suggesting that Rebecca put on a black latex glove or a gardening glove and then used to paint everything on the door? It wouldn't make sense, that, because if you're going to put gloves on so you don't leave behind any evidence or marks which could link back to yourself, it just seems, first of all, it seems like if you're even going to consider it to some extent by putting some gloves on at some point so you don't get it on yourself, even though she did, contradicted themselves there. I mean, like, if you're going to do something to yourself, are you really going to take in consideration of whether you get paint on you, whether you get messy or dirty or not? Because you're not going to be around to know, because once you've done what you've done, you're no longer present. If you're intending on staying alive and you're simply decorating a room, decorating a house, painting the walls, the ceiling, you might cover the room with sheeting so no paint can get on the floor or stain. You might wear a pair of gloves, you may wear a pair of overalls so you can paint without the worry of getting it on your body, on your skin, because it might be a pain, a nightmare to wash off, and you don't want to get messy or dirty. You're organised, you don't like mess. That all makes sense, that. But if Rebecca was going to do what she was to herself, self-inflicted, why would she wear protection to avoid fingerprints and DNA linking back to her? Does she want it to be deemed as something else, like she's staging her own death as a form of murder or foul play to try and pin the blame on someone else? Why would Rebecca do that? Or is it because she felt that due to, whether it be what family would think or culture or religion or anything else, would look down upon her deeply in shame, and you're not allowed to remove yourself from this world, maybe based on certain outlooks, perspectives, or what family could think. So you do what you do to yourself to remove any suffering or struggles, but you do it in such a way so it looks like someone else was responsible. So then you don't get judged or blamed or looked down upon by family, because that would be upsetting. I get that, but then it's a double-edged sword, because it means, what does the family think? How would the family feel if they see what's happening and they see that's on the doorway? Staging your death to look like something else would just apply more pain, stress and worry on the family. If it's a murder and if there's no clear outline result down the line, and they just got to live with it, psychologically that's going to be wearing on the people. It's not going to do much good. Would Rebecca go to such length to do all that just for the sake of doing something and changing it so then people aren't ashamed of her or disappointed? It might be a bit of a reach there, but it's just a theory. I just don't think that she would go to the length of doing it all herself. Of course, with the DNA print, thumbprint being on the lip, the catch of the paint tube, right, so there's some proof that she engaged with that. So if she engaged with that, must have used it to get onto the brush and then used the brush to get onto the door. But, you know, how do you manage to have DNA on this but not on the brush which you're grabbing and touching and holding when painting and spending some time painting it? That's why I think maybe she never got the chance to use it or touch it, and she was never going to do it in the first place. But someone else did. Someone else that was wearing gloves. Maybe Rebecca's DNA or part of it was on the lip of this paint tube because she was using it a previous day, a time before. If it can be said that when it comes to the gloves, right? Let's get back to the gloves hair and then the gloves hair. If they've been used in the past and not in the present, and it's by Rebecca, why can't that apply to maybe the paint tube, or a few days or a day before she's considered in using it, or she was going to move it about? Then again, I mean, you could argue and say, well, if items like this were left and neglected in the past, right? Left in the past, wouldn't it be noticeable? Item like this, left in the past, visually noticeable, especially the longer it stays there for, and people come and go, inspecting the house, searching about, or maintenance-wise in other areas, the exception of this one, but the guest house, for example, or the panties, women's clothing on the floor. But it depends when it's all processed. This being processed years later or so, panties being processed later as for the DNA. But when it comes back to the paint tube itself, the reason why DNA was found on it, even if it was only a partial fingerprint from her, is because it was processed and checked immediately, like with other items about inside of the bedroom, because it was deemed with higher importance. Just because other items found in the guest house or the crawl space were further away, not seen as important, weren't looked into immediately, opportunities of finding DNA on that was lost with time due to the locations, the basement, the moisture, the coldness, the dampness, and all of that, and if the heating's on or not, temperature changes as well, day and night. That could lead to, if it's not stored properly in a dry place, could lead to DNA being wasted or lost. But in a bedroom like this, insulated on a carpet as well, and checked quickly, the DNA doesn't wear off as fast. So what does that mean to say then? That this item could still be used by Rebecca, but previously, days before, a week before. But would it have been on the ground here exactly? It's very possible. You never know that when Rebecca made contact with this paint tube, could have been before her death, long before that, and she was actually using it to do some painting. Then on the day of her death, the reason why it's here isn't because that's how it was left all this time. Rebecca may have put it away previous. There was no need for her or reason to wear gloves at that time. But on the day of her death, if someone was responsible, they probably would be wearing gloves in order to use the paintbrush without DNA on it, and so on and so on. When you're wearing gloves, you're more likely to be able to preserve the original evidence or fingerprints that are already there. You're not cross-contaminating it because you're wearing gloves. You're protecting your fingertips from overshadowing what's already on there. You're preventing the oils from your skin, your fingers, from seeping onto the key item object, keeping it all within those gloves. So the outer layer of the gloves are safe from harming what's already on the paint tube. What's already on the paint tube links to Rebecca, but it may not have been linked on the day. It could have been days, weeks before when she actually used it herself. The next time it was used, and the reason why it was found on the ground here, was by the hands of a potential killer, someone responsible that was wearing gloves when using it, hence why no fingerprints linked to anyone else but Rebecca. But the relevancy of Rebecca isn't on the day of her death. And when it comes to the paintbrush, as you see here, reason why no DNA on it is because someone else was handling it with gloves. So they were able to use the paint tube, squeeze it, use it on the brush. No mixture of water. You could argue and say if it was really Rebecca, with the obsession of thinking of sound of mind and all of that, when you're painting, you might mix a bit of water with paint depending on what you're really doing as well and what you're painting. If Rebecca's a bit of an artist, she probably would consider that with the brush strokes and how you operate and use it. With someone who's more amateur or not a painter and the rushing about, not going to consider that. Just get some paint, splash it on if it's really thick in texture, regardless, and in a bit of a rush, hence why there's paint marks on the ground and leaving stuff around on the floor, something that Rebecca wouldn't do herself, right? Because you could say, out of all of the items, with the exception of the knife, out of all these items here, how many of them would be linked to Rebecca directly? you know, yes, Rebecca's period blood was found on the knife or a knife, but was all her fingerprints and DNA found on it as well? Can't quite remember, maybe, but you could get period blood off someone on an object, but they may have never held it. Someone else may have used it near an area which was associated with where the blood comes from. So once again, you're constantly wearing gloves, but objects you're using may have already had a backstory to Rebecca days, weeks before, and people assume that because it's got her print on, it must have been used on the day. Not always the case. It's like framing it as if there was a killer and they tried, staging it, swaying it in the direction that it was all Rebecca's doing. It was all her, when it may have not have been someone else responsible. Does make you think. Now, there was paint described to be on Rebecca's, I think, neck or face area, hand, and parts of the body. But doesn't mean to say that she, used a hand, touched herself, scratched, itched herself, pressed on herself to spread the paint all over her. It's possible that even paint that gets onto her thumbprint could be by the hands of another person that's wearing gloves who may get paint on them and get messy, but they don't care because they're protected. They're not leaving any DNA behind. And with the paint that they do have remnants on their fingertips and the gloves, the black latex, when they're grabbing Rebecca or moving her possibly or doing the tying, the paint can spread, and depending on how quick it's done or the time from when the paint dries upon the gloves, some of it may spread onto Rebecca's body, making it seem like Rebecca was doing all the painting because she's got the paint on her. But it is possible for another person to be doing the painting. They get paint on themselves as well. Then they touch another person, not to be taken out of context, and then the paint spreads. Sometimes you see it as a prank and a joke where you might get friends or a couple painting a room, decorating, and one individual decides to splash a bit of paint on the other, or one person gets a bit of paint on the hand and then wipes it on the other person's top, messing about, playing around. You can see how paint can spread, how liquids and stains can spread onto other people who weren't doing it to themselves. That could be Rebecca's situation. So put aside the knives, most of the items that are there don't have Rebecca's DNA on it, or they may have a bit, but it doesn't mean to say it happened on the day. It may link back to earlier, before her death. So, as for that white thing there, that is kind of like a disposable kitchen bag. But why would it have been taken upstairs? Used to put rubbish in? Just thinking that, is it possible that if anyone was responsible and there was foul play, did they take this kitchen bag upstairs to bin everything, all the items of evidence which could have been used in her death or building up to it? And they were originally going to take that kitchen bag, go back down the stairs, and then maybe use that door on the left there to access the basement area. This one. Went down there and went to the crawl space, and that's why the glove was found. And they thought, you know what, leaving a bag of items all sealed up and buried under there, or buried in the ground in the dirt covered, isn't a good idea, because then it will seem too obvious that it's foul play. You can get foul play and then covered up foul play. And in the process of foul play, the person considers performing that by moving items and evidence, hiding it, moving it on, burying, disposing, hiding it, all in a bag, putting it under the basement, putting it underground so no one will think to look there, but then realising, you know what, it's probably not a good idea, and then bailing out on the idea, going back up the stairs, and then, whether because he had enough time or not, just dumping it on the ground. It's a possibility. But you know what? What I will say is, and maybe there's a reason, where that bag is, it actually covers the paint tube, doesn't it? That there, near the dog bone, that patch. See the dog bone up there, under the bed? This bag's covering the paint tube. Why is that exactly? So, it seems like the painting on the door happened first. The paint applied to the brush, at least, occurred first. And then it was dropped on the floor. And then this kitchen bag was just draped over it, so you can't see it. Was that done on purpose? Makes me think that a person considered bagging all these items up, from the paintbrush to the paint tube, the knives, and thinking of, right, where can we dispose it? But if they were short for time, or they felt that it just seemed too suspicious, they gave up on the idea and just left the bag behind and then walked away, walked out of the house. Of course, was there any surveillance or footage or anyone nearby, passerbys or locals, that would have seen anyone walking away from the house at the time, noticing anything abnormal or strange? Let me know in the comment section what you think about that. But a kitchen bag could be used to put rubbish in, disposing of stuff. Well, it seems like there was an attempt to dispose of items here, but ultimately didn't get round to it. And what I'd like to know is, just near that knife, is that like a baby wipe, a wet wipe, a makeup wipe? Because if that's the case, well, it was described that when it came to the guest house, let's just go back to the guest house down here, in one of the rooms, there were makeup wipes on the dresser or the table. So if they came from the main house, does that link to Rebecca using them at some point? I wonder. Makes me think, in a way. I mean, makeup wipes likely associated with a woman using them, if they have been used already, to get rid of makeup. A night out somewhere, coming back, it just happened that Rebecca went out night out for dinner the night before, the 12th, with Jonah, the boyfriend, and Jonah's brother Adam. So, is there a link? But the guest house, fam, what would Rebecca be doing down there? Maybe it doesn't link the same. It's only because it looks like there's a wipe there from a different angle. There. I know on this particular one you don't see the knife, so it looks like photos have been taken at different times, not all at once, when everything was all on the ground. Maybe that's something to take in mind, into consideration. If items were coming and going once there but then not, did the police add this bag themselves? I would argue and say no, because it seems like at the time of her death, or the build-up, or post-death, and that cryptic message on the door was written on, you got paint on the brush, you got paint on the floor, those little stains down there, circled. You've also got paint on this bag, from the looks of it. See all those black marks? And that's on the inside of... Is it the inside of the bag? Is it turned inside out, or what? Maybe it just looks the same as it does on the inside. Regardless, with black paint being all over it, speckled, and... Can you see all those black marks? Can you see fingerprints, thumbprint marks, skid marks, or just splatter marks of paint? What was the purpose of that exactly? It seems like this kitchen bag was used at the same time with the painting, at the same time of Rebecca's death or the post-death. What was the actual aim, the intention behind this? The only other thing that I can think of is that if there was foul play, and what happened to Rebecca, as we're seeing here, her bedroom, the balcony itself, what else do we notice laying about? I mean, look at that little cabinet off screen to the left. Her paint could have been there, or brushes neatly put away. Tubing on the ground, whatever that is. Can't really tell what that is. And then that's a table down there. Balcony up there, and a bedroom. I'm just thinking that some of these items you wouldn't expect to see in her bedroom, like the knives, because there was two of them. I don't know if I might not have all the camera shots for it, but, you know, some of the stuff you just wouldn't expect in a bedroom. Even maybe certain paint supplies or brushes, she may have had them in a separate room. I'm just thinking if all these items were gathered together and brought to the bedroom, it could explain why this bag's there. The bag is used to transport all the items instead of trying to, you know, balance them in one hand or not, especially if you've got a knife as well, carrying it all. If all of this somehow linked to someone who just didn't have a trace because they were wearing gloves, then likely they grabbed this bag from downstairs, bagged items up to take upstairs to then stage something or to paint and leave that haunting, cryptic message on the doorway. But if another person was responsible for leaving this message, what was their aim behind it then? Was it as a form of revenge? Avenging someone? What was the real point of it? How did they benefit and what was the motive? How would it be driven? And even if you was to apply it to Rebecca, how does the motive apply to Rebecca then? Because we looked at who Rebecca saved or who she may have, and it said there was no known history of Jonah or Adam being saved by Rebecca, so who else could it be? And as for Max, well, it didn't seem like she saved him because his condition was getting worse and was likely to end in death, so I don't think you could really say that. The balcony itself and the construction of that with the ties, the knots and all of that, and even the gag in the mouth, so a person wouldn't make much noise. Normally, if a person's going to be gagged, someone else is responsible and present. Someone else present trying to silence someone who may be scared as to what is going to happen next. So, by the hands of another person. And if there's certain signs that there's by the hands of another person, then it could explain to the lack of DNA on other stuff. It's just a coincidence how you got Adam, who was present on site at the property, and he's the one that claimed to cut that rope. I know it's blurred because of YouTube, but cut it, so it would have gone longer in length, but he cut it with a knife and he performed CPR on Rebecca, and yet no DNA of him relevant to what he said that he did. Unusual. Strange. Was he lying? Did he pretend that he did all that to appear as if he cared? Was he wearing the gloves earlier to do stuff which didn't leave a print, and he still was wearing them when he was giving her CPR? But then again, as for the gloves, if any paint was still on those gloves, then it would be on her body when applying the CPR in the same relevant area, and I don't think it was in the same area. But then again, when referring back to certain types of gloves, if they were taken off in between, you know, you look at those as an example, they may have been taken off in between. I mean, there's like a black line there. Not guaranteed, but is that like a streak of black paint by any chance relevant to the glove that may have been used to do the painting? Because it looks dark in colour, looks like a skid mark or so. It could be paint, could link back to the bedroom, the painting on the door. Why would anyone come down to the crawl space of the basement though to leave that there? Because they were trying to dispose of stuff, and that would be considered foul play and higher chances of murder. All in all, hopefully you found this video interesting. It'd be appreciated if you hit the like button, thumbs up, share the video to spread the awareness, and if you're on mobile device or tablet, down below in the comment section, if you swipe across, there should be a star symbol to hype the video, just to get it out there. Considering this case dates back to 2011, you don't really get much coverage nowadays, at least to the depth that I do. Most people will tell the story of the Rebecca Zahau case from start to finish. That's it. They won't look beyond, which is the most important part, considering that's what Rebecca's family has done previously, fighting on for Rebecca, fighting on for the possible truth, and so on. Well, ever since, I've come on in, and that's exactly what I've tried to do. So hopefully, the awareness continues on in different ways, and you can let me know your thoughts, whether you agree or not, and if you've got your own theories, you can leave your comments below. My name's Warlike Raf. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye and good night.